December 1894, and it is a cold, dark and foggy night in Blackstone Edge. At the pub now called the White House, the landlord believes he's in for an easy and probably an early night. But at 7 p.m, a stranger walks in. His arrival kickstarts a night of terror at the White House that none inside the building would ever forget, if they survive the night in the first place. Hi everybody, Matt back with you. Hope you're okay. When you're on the hills above Todmorden, Littleborough, Cragg Vale, it doesn't really matter that it's 25 degrees. There is always a very strong breeze, so I've just come down here to talk to you to introduce the video today. I am on my way to Blackstone Edge. I've been walking from Todmorden. It's quite a long way. And I'm kind of on the reservoir walk. There is a sign halfway that tells you in less than 3 miles you are at the White House pub, and that is a successful pub on the road at Blackstone Edge. Probably successful because if you're walking this area, it's more than likely you're going to need to pop in for food or drink. And it's been there a very long time. But a long time ago it was called the Coach and Horses. So, on this particular night in December, it was, as mentioned, cold, very dark and very foggy. It was December after all. So the landlord, Mr. McIntyre, presumed there would be no visitors. At this point in time, there was only a house about a mile away, nothing else near. So he was really surprised when, at 7 o'clock that evening, a stranger walked in. He might have expected a local perhaps to come through the fog and find their way there, but not a stranger. The stranger ordered some whiskey and went and sat by the fire. Whilst there, he kept standing up and then sitting down again, and standing up and sitting down again, like he was going to do something. And he also seemed to be fixated on the door. Also working this night was Mrs. McIntyre and one member of staff, Eliza, a barmaid. At this point, Mrs. McIntyre was behind the bar. The man stood up again and this time moved towards the bar to speak to Mrs. McIntyre. And he said to her, "Have you got a stray dog leashed behind the bar?" It was a strange question, but there was no dog there, and Mrs. McIntyre replied with that answer. All of a sudden, the man seemed to explode. "Don't lie to me. I know there's a stray dog behind there, and that dog is mine." So sorry, it's not a particularly easy spot to film here next to the roadside, but this is the White House today. Obviously back in the day, the Coach and Horses. Because I'm stood directly on the road, I'll tell you the rest of the story from a different path. So Mrs. McIntyre called for her husband, called Peter, and he came in and to talk to this stranger, to say that there was no stray dog hidden behind the counter at the bar. The man thought for a moment and then pulled a gun out of his pocket and said, "You're right, this is the dog," and he fired. Seemingly working out what was going on, Mrs. McIntyre leapt across the bar at the man and managed to reach him just as he fired. Although it didn't knock him over, it was enough to send the bullet into Mr. McIntyre's shoulder instead of potentially a deadly shot. However, because he hadn't moved, he then turned his attention to Mrs. McIntyre and pulled the gun on her, firing. By some miracle, the bullet, as it were, hit Mrs. McIntyre where she was wearing her corset, and the bullet hit the metal of her corset. Initially thinking with that shock she'd been shot and she was doomed, she then realised she was unhurt and very quickly grabbed Mr. McIntyre, yelled at Eliza, and the three of them fled into the kitchen and barricaded the door. As they're locked inside the kitchen, the man seems to go almost feral. He is banging on the door, shouting loudly, threatening them. And Mr. and Mrs. McIntyre and Eliza decide the only thing they can do is to escape through the kitchen window. But although Mr. McIntyre, his life seems to be alright, he's been hit in the shoulder, he is very seriously injured. However, they have no choice. So they escape out of the kitchen window into the darkness and the fog and the freezing night. Mr. and Mrs. McIntyre go a slight further away from the White House and then lie down on the ground. With the fog as thick as it was, they presumed the man wouldn't see them. Eliza, though, has a very different idea. She decides to remove her clogs and start to run down the road to Littleborough, just down the hill here. However, she is unaware that outside at that time is the man, and he sees her, gives chase, and catches her. The man threatens Eliza with his gun, demanding to know where the money was kept. She tells him it's upstairs, and he lets her go, but says he would kill her if he ever saw her again. From outside, Mr. and Mrs. McIntyre watched things unfold. They saw the man creep round the side of the building and disappear into the kitchen window that they had escaped from. So if they'd stayed in there, it's likely he would have reached them at that point. And as luck would have it, just at that moment in time as well, in the darkness, in the fog, they could hear a horse and trap coming along the road by the White House. This was the only chance they would have, and with the man inside the pub, Mrs. McIntyre left her husband there and ran towards the noise of the horse. Timed almost to perfection, the two riders saw Mrs. McIntyre and stopped the horse and cart. Realising she was in deep distress, they grabbed her and threw her onto the cart and fled as fast as they could down the road into Littleborough for help. There they found the police and the doctor and came back. The doctor went off to find Mr. McIntyre out on the hills. He was still alive. The police went inside the pub. The pub had been completely trashed. but strangely nothing stolen. So the night of terror at the White House had come to an end. The McIntyres were still alive, but for Mr. McIntyre it was only just. Sadly, he never fully recovered from his injuries, never got over what had happened to him, and sadly passed away some time later. The police, though, now had a task to perform, to track down their would-be killer, and it ended up being surprisingly easy. In just a day, the man was tracked down and found in another pub. His name was Robert Cragg. He came from the Lake District, but had just moved into Todmorden, and he'd either been discharged from jail or escaped from jail 2 days before going to the White House, and he had a long record as a hardened criminal. He was sent to trial on the 2nd of February, and whilst there, he seemed to put on an act of madness. He acted like he was crazy, chewing at his own clothes, but seemed to only act like this if somebody was watching. The court decided it was all an act, and he was charged with 2 accounts of attempted murder. Found guilty, he was sentenced to 12 years. Okay, so there we go. That is the story of the night of terror at the White House pub in 1894, and what unfolded over the evening. For me, the hero of this story has got to be Mrs. McIntyre. She launched herself at the guy with the gun to try and save her husband. She dragged them all into the back room to safety. She got them out of the building to safety, and she even managed to run and flag down this horse and cart to go into Littleborough for help. So yeah, things may have been very, very different up there had she not acted that way. I imagine potentially all of them could have been shot dead. I don't know, and it's only again through luck that she was wearing that corset at the time. So, hope you've enjoyed this one, and plenty more still to come in the months ahead. So please like, share, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next video very, very soon. Keep safe, take care.